everybody, and welcome to the Magical Learning Podcast for this week. The Magical Learning Podcast is a podcast that looks at important topics in business and life, and today, technology. And we bring a bit of fun to them and a bit of interesting insights. Today, we've got an expert that we're going to be talking to, and we love chatting to our experts. But before we get to them, we've got to check in on the regular team and see how we are going. So, Danette, our Director of Learning, how are you going today?
Yeah, good, Jez. I've had a good week. Few workshops and stuff. Actually got home on the weekend. That was very exciting. First time in a month that I actually got to sleep in my own bed. So very excited. And other than that, yeah, it's starting to feel like spring. So super excited. Great to see everyone on, and welcome, Paige. Great to see you. Have you back.
Yes. Well, thank you, Danette, and great to hear from you. And we'll get to that guest very shortly. A little teaser, we call that in the industry. Let's go to our CEO, Graham. How are you going this week?
Hi, everyone. I am well, thank you. Happy Friday. Well, it's Friday for me. If it's not Friday for you, well, tough, you know. That's very caring, Graham. Right, I workshop with a new client this week. That was fun. As we were sharing off camera earlier, I'm excited about the fact that there's only 3 more sleeps until Monday. And Sir Bob Geldof just doesn't know what he's missing out on. Leave it at that.
A reference that has certainly flown over my head, but I hope many of our listeners it'll land nicely.
Sorry, I keep forgetting that I'm older than dirt. Boomtown Rats. Just what's the? Is it GPT it now instead of Google it? I don't know. I'm old, so I don't keep up with that. But anyway.
So Sir Bob Geldof used to be the lead singer, and it was "I Don't Like Mondays."
The song was "I Don't Like Mondays." That was that their only hit? It may well have been. And Sir Bobby, for your listening, apologies, but you need to come on and explain that to everybody else.
Well, I'd say Graham, speaking of days, I'm feeling a bit easy beats because I've got Friday on my mind because we're recording this on a Friday.
Nice.
There we go. That's an old reference.
Nice. Yeah.
All right. Well, yeah, great to have you on, Graham. And let's hope these bizarre and obscure song references keep on rolling today. Who knows? Dr. Paige, no pressure on you, but how are you going this week?
Well, I'm looking forward to Saturday Night Fever, which is tomorrow.
There we go.
And that's because it's been a tough week, but I'm looking forward to this conversation. Lots going on in my world, professionally and personally, but nothing I like better than a good chat about a good topic. And I reckon that's what we're going to be doing today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dr. Paige. And we're excited to have you on the pod. As always, we love having our experts on, and it's always a pleasure to have you on. Now, for people that haven't interacted with Dr. Paige Williams before, let me get them up to speed. So Dr. Paige Williams is a leadership expert, author, and keynote speaker whose work equips leaders to thrive in disruption and create cultures where sustainable high performance isn't just possible, it's predictable and repeatable. Her approach blends cutting-edge psychology, systems thinking, and decades of senior-level coaching experience. In the age of AI, she argues the real threat isn't technology, it's the self-limiting beliefs and accountability avoidance that quietly erode trust and performance. By leading ourselves first and reconnecting to our magnificence, we weave a golden thread of accountability that strengthens individuals, teams, and the systems they serve. So, Dr. Paige Williams, what a person to be talking to today.
Thanks so much, Jez. Thank you.
The topic today is the golden thread, an antidote to anxiety in the age of AI, which I think, we find that a lot of our AI episodes are really popular. People are very fascinated in this topic right now. So, Dr. Paige, this is a really important one. Before we get into all the questions, and I know we've got a lot to get through, did you have anything that you wanted to tee this conversation up with and why you chose it?
So I think the golden thread really is the essence of what we're talking about, because AI is just the next wave of the next thing, right? And yeah, it's a particular type of disruption. It has a particular flavor to it. There are specific impacts around it. And yet actually dealing with change and disruption is a very human endeavor that we have been doing for centuries. And so the golden thread speaks to there is an inherent ability, capacity in each of us to be able to deal with this. And AI is the same as many disruptions that have come before, with some differences. And so how is it that if we actually anchor back to the truth of who we are as human beings and our adaptive capacity, we are more able to deal with what the age of AI presents us with, both in terms of the challenges and the opportunities. And so I reckon we are the biggest challenge and the biggest opportunity in our own way and in our future as we look forward to the age of AI.
Fantastic. Well, I mean, look, like I said, it's a very popular topic at the moment. It's something that a lot of people are very fascinated to learn about. So I'm very excited to get into this conversation. As with Magical Learning Expert Pods, we like to get questions from different people from around the team to get different perspectives on the topic. And so let's start with that one with Danette. So, Danette, you always have two questions. So do you want to tell us about what you chose and why you chose them?
So I'll start with my first one. And it is, everyone's talking about AI, so it's on everyone's minds at the moment. But what I'm really curious about, Paige, is your perspective. What are the real leadership challenges that sit beneath all of the dramatic headlines that are happening at the moment? What's the deep stuff that we need to be thinking about?
Well, I think this is the thing, Danette. I mean, I've just kind of given a little kind of peek behind the curtain of where my thinking is at with this, and that's that AI isn't the villain, it's a mirror. It actually reflects where our systems are already fragile in some way, where there's a lack of trust, where there's a lack of clarity, where there's a lack of adaptability. And what AI is doing is kind of pressure testing those systems in a way that they haven't ever been before. So it reflects where our systems are fragile. So it acts as a mirror where there's perhaps a lack of trust, a lack of clarity, a lack of agility or flexibility, where we're too rigid. And so leaders who treat AI as like the challenge or the problem, they're missing that deeper truth because we are built to adapt, right? If we weren't built to adapt, we wouldn't still be on the planet. It's as simple as that. And it comes back to an idea I wrote about. I wrote actually about it first in 2019, just as we were tipping into COVID. It's this idea of anti-fragile, and that actually disruption and challenge and change, if we have the right attitude and approach to it, we learn through it and it makes us better on the other side. So disruption doesn't have to break us, and AI is probably one of only a number of systemic disruptions. Like the World Health Organization have been tracking some of the big changes that are going on across the globe at the moment, and there's so many across political, technological, environmental. There's so much going on. They've actually kind of called it a super cycle of change. So I don't in any way want to downplay the amount of disruption and change that is going on, and that people are feeling that. And yet within that context, I want to say, yeah, and you know what, we are built for this. We are inherently anti-fragile because natural systems are. When you look at how a natural system bounces back from massive disruption, when you look at what happens when a forest fire goes through, what actually comes back on the other side of that is stronger growth, like the ecosystem grows stronger. And we are natural systems. So the real challenge here is human. It's our beliefs, it's our behaviors, and it's that our culture move much more slowly than technology. And what tends to happen, what I have seen happening over the last 18 months or so, is that organizations and leaders rush into tools without kind of preparing the human system that will use them. So the people and even the structures. And so this isn't a technological challenge that we're facing, it's a human adaptive challenge that we're facing. And that requires us to think about both our inside out, like what are our thoughts, our beliefs, what are the biases that we might have, our energy, and also the outside in, what are the cultural norms, the structures, and the accountability. Because without both, AI adoption just becomes thin, becomes narrow. So it's not a case of how do we adopt, but how do we stay human? How do we stay focused on the human system? And how do we co-create intelligence with what's available?
What a great answer. Thank you so much, Paige. So my second one then is, you've said the threat isn't the technology, but our avoidance of the accountability. And I'd really love for you to sort of dive into that whole area around accountability rather than the tech side. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you know, like accountability is, it's the thing where I say, if you're only going to do one thing, do accountability. Because once you do accountability right, everything else becomes easier, and whether that's personally or professionally, because when we start having the right conversations about the right thing in the right way with the right people at the right time, and that's how I define doing accountability right, then we have clarity and confidence and conviction, and we are owning what's ours to own, and we're clear about what is not ours to own equally and what we are inviting other people into their responsibilities and accountabilities around. So when we think about that through the lens of AI, we can't outsource integrity to algorithms. Simple. So accountability in an age of AI must stay human. Sure, technology can assist, but humans remain responsible. And look, we've already seen some of the impact of that where there's been bias baked into that technology, right? And we've seen the impact of that in terms of outcomes that have been unfair or unequitable to people. And so the challenge with that is that when we've got accountability that is inconsistent or biased, that's what erodes trust faster than anything external, because it means that it doesn't feel like we've got solid ground to stand on. And so when leaders kind of or organizations hide behind, oh, the system decided, i.e., the algorithm decided, and they blame the automation when decisions backfire, or they just abdicate responsibility for ethical outcomes, and they give that integrity, that ethical integrity away. Well, that's when that trust just gets shattered. And at these times when, as we've talked about, there's a super cycle of change, people they are hungry to feel held and supported and to have solid ground, to feel that they can trust something. Because let's face it, with everything that's going on at the moment, it's hard to feel that with some of the big systems that we're involved in. And so the local systems become even more important. Like, what's my supervisor? Can I count on them? My peer, my friend, my family member, like, can I count on you to do what you say you're going to do, to follow through when something is unfair that's been automated and that I am feeling the impact of. So there's a real, I talked about co-creating intelligence, and accountability is a part of that, because we need to be clear on the expectations of what is human work in this age of AI and what is the work of AI. And they're not the same, but when you come together, each of them does something that the other can't. And I think that is the critical piece of this. Each of them does something that the other can't. And so we're not outsourcing. We are keeping the things that need to stay human very, very human. And that's what the golden thread is all about. Accountability is what holds performance and humanity together. And if leaders avoid it, well, the thread frays and the system becomes more fragile.
Great answer. And when I think about, things like trust and, that human side of things, for organisations that are struggling, it's a competitive advantage once you double down on that, build that accountability and stuff like that, because it creates that beautiful, safe environment, as you said, that people want to be held in that. So awesome discussion so far. Can't wait to hear the answers to the other questions too. Thanks, Paige.
Thanks, Janet.
Graham, do you want to tell us about your question, a bit about why you chose it as well?
I actually looked at my question after listening to Paige's answers to Danette's questions and thought, well, that's useless. I need a better question. But I'll go for the question anyway. The question was, what's one practical thing listeners can do or viewers can do to lead themselves well in this AI-driven world? I struggle with the AI-driven thing. I think it's still human-driven at the moment, to some extent. But then I, like a lot of other people, probably don't understand enough about it to make judgments like that. But I do like the point you made before, Paige, about the innate human need to feel safety and comfort and connection and belonging, and how that has continued to be fractured over time. I've been listening to Nexus, the book by Yuval Noah Harari, and some of the parallels. You were saying that the challenges we're facing at the moment, the opportunities, are sort of the same as the ones we've always faced. Maybe a little bit more noise around a lot of them, and part of the opportunity for all of us is to just bring it back to not to just be completely self-centered, but instead of worrying about everything that's happening in the world, because it's too much, too big, and we have so little influence over that. If we focus smaller on, yeah, how am I showing up in my role at work? How am I helping my family, my community, my neighbour? How am I helping or improving the life of the person at the checkout counter in the store that I just am going to, sort of thing? How do we bring it back to that? I'll stop talking now because I'm sick of the sound of my voice, but I'd love yours. What's one practical thing listeners can do to lead themselves well in an AI-driven world?
That's a great question, Graham. Thank you for asking it. It's important that we do feel a sense of autonomy when there is so much that's outside of our control. So, self-determination theory is one of the core theories in psychology, and self-determination theory says that we need three things to feel well, do well, and lead well in the world. And that is, we need autonomy, a sense of choice and voice. We need competence, a sense of mastery in our abilities, and a sense of relatedness in terms of connected to others and connected to something outside of ourselves. And yet, actually, when there is so much disruption, that autonomy piece is the thing that often goes. And we saw that in COVID, right? There was a lot of autonomy that was very challenged in COVID. And as you spoke to, Graham, when there's so much going on that's outside of our control, it's easy to fall into the trap of learned helplessness, of helpless and hopeless. I can't do anything about it. There's no point. It's never going to get any better. And so, and yet, I reckon the crux and another thread of the golden thread is that to lead others well, we must first lead ourselves well. Because we simply cannot show up for others if what's going on inside our own heads and our relationship with ourselves isn't healthy. So if we've got internal chatter that is negative and toxic and critical, it's hard for us to show up as a leader in a way that is generous and safe and builds confidence in others because we don't have confidence in ourselves. So the inside out, outside in that I talked about earlier, that's the model that I developed in my PhD research. And there's such a strong relationship between how we see the world is how we see ourselves. Right. So if we have a very negative internal dialogue, if we have a very negative, unsafe relationship with ourselves, we are not going to be able to create secure, safe relationships with others. Or if we're a leader, create a context in which others feel safe and secure. So if you say what's one practical thing listeners can do, it's create a good relationship with yourself. The easiest way to test that is to dial into and tune into your what I call your internal radio. So Paige FM, Graham FM, Dana FM, Jez FM. And like, what are the tracks that are playing on your internal radio? Right? Because if you've got thrash, heavy metal kind of going on all the time, that doesn't mean you're going to show up as a calm, generous, courageous leader, because that's what's going on internally. Great book on this written by Ethan Kross called Chatter. And he talks about how important our internal dialogue is in terms of not only how we show up in the world, our behaviors, our attitudes, our energy, but also how we see the world. And that was certainly what I looked at in my PhD, inside out, outside in, was what we have on the inside. Basically, we see the world through that lens. And so if we are not hopeful, if we are not confident, if we are not positive that something better can come the other side of this, like that anti-fragility, then we're not going to lead others in a way that generates that with them. So I reckon that's the most practical thing we can do, is lead ourselves well first so that we can show up and lead others well, whether that's family, friends, or in a formal leadership role.
Thank you. If we were to, just because I can, drag the music analogy out a little further that we were playing around with before. So I'm still Graham AM because I am older than dirt. And it occurred to me that the song that's been playing a lot in the back of my head sometimes is an old Slade tune from the 60s or 70s, Mama, We're All Crazy Now. I think it was Slade. Tuning in to what's going on, and I agree 100%. I think how our external world is a reflection of our internal, in a matter of speaking. and how we see ourselves internally is then reflected and impacts on everybody around us. I wonder how much more of a challenge is it for us to sort of hit the pause button and stop and reflect in a healthy way when, again, there's theoretically so much going on, and we are more connected and more disconnected than we ever were. And I suppose,
Absolutely.
is it also fair to say that one of the other really important things for all of us to keep in mind at the moment is that we cannot do this well alone, and nor should we try to. Because it
Uh,
also reminds me of, sorry, really quickly, the Michael Singer book, Untethered, The Untethered
yeah,
Soul.
yeah. The Untethered
Well,
Soul.
he talks about the
Great
same
book.
thing that Ethan Cross did. If the voice that you listen to in your head when it talks about you, if that was your best friend saying the same thing to you, you would ditch them. You drop
Yeah.
them in a heartbeat, have nothing more to do with them. But because it's in your head, we pay attention to it.
Mm.
And I wonder how much of just technology in general keeps us in that sort of environment where that voice is amplified, increased. Um, so does disconnecting and moving away from AI at times help us get a little more clarity around what's going on inside? I don't know. So
I
many
think
questions.
that you raise a number of really interesting points, Graham. I think there's a couple of things, a couple of threads of your commentary that I pick up on. One is that I think that as social media has become an inherent kind of part of the fabric of our world, we're able to compare ourselves a lot more. And so this idea of an externalized self, where we're not just, if you think back to when we were kids, it was comics and magazines. I can remember getting my Jackie magazine as a teenager, and that then went into Marie Claire or whatever. But that was once a month. It wasn't that I could go on multiple times a day and compare myself to, people from all over the world. And so there's this externalized pressure that's even greater now than it was. And so how do we keep a track of what's true for us when there is so much of that going on? And I have a behavior change model that I use in my work, which talks about with and from awareness, which is where that tuning in piece comes in. So with and from awareness, understanding that I am in and at choice. And I think this is something that we forget often, particularly because there is so much going on right now, is that moment to moment, we have a choice. We have a choice to stop scrolling. We have a choice to pause. We have a choice to not respond straight away. We have a choice to slow everything down. So with and from awareness, in and at choice, and understanding that and having taken kind of a moment or understand the choices available to us, be and do with intention. And what that invites us to do, that awareness, choice, intention, is we get out of just this reactive cycle. We start tuning into, who do I choose to be in this moment? What is in service of me and maybe the boundaries I have, or the work that needs to be done here, or who I am, aligned with my values? What choice do I want to make in alignment with that? And how do I intentionally want to take action and show up from that place? So awareness, choice, intention. And it's just kind of a meta framework to think about as you move through whatever you're going through, that you're not just kind of like in a pinball machine going boing, 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 boing from one thing to another. But the awareness is the first piece. So unless we do the work to actually tune in, rather than trying to kind of turn the volume down or ignore it, if we actually tune in, then we get to ask, is this helpful or unhelpful? And we get to make a choice around whether we want to do something to turn the volume down because it's unhelpful, or to change the channel to something that is more helpful. So I think there is absolutely, with so much coming in externally now, we need, it's even more important that we do that. And the other piece of your thread, which I think is just so true and important to kind of come back to, is we can't do it alone. which is why leading ourselves well in order to lead others well. If we are showing up and our internal world is not healthy and not clean, like we're bringing that energy, we're bringing that resonance into every interaction we have. And it's just like spraying the world with kind of not clean energy. And that's just, I kind of go, so I come back to accountability. What's yours to own? What's yours to own is your internal world, to do as much of the work as you can and get support where it's needed. And I understand some people have had experiences in their lives where it means that this isn't work they can necessarily do solo. They need professional support, and guidance to do that. And I appreciate that fully. But we each have to take responsibility for how we show up and what we bring to our relationships, whether they are professional or personal. And that's where this golden thread starts.
Yeah, love it. Thanks, Paige.
Awesome.
We could talk for like 6 years and you'd be sick of me, but I'd still be enjoying the conversation. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. Well, John's joined. John.
But sorry, apologies for being late. Hello, Paige. Lovely to meet you.
Hello, John. Lovely to meet you too.
It was interesting hearing you talk just then, just about the choices. That's yeah, I don't disagree with you, and it's something I've tried to instill in my kids, that you always have a choice. You may not like the choices you have, but you do have a choice. And
Yeah.
yeah, it was interesting to tune in just then.
I think I agree. And choices and owning what's yours to own in terms of the choices that you make, and then the consequences, not in terms of punishment, but just you make a choice and there are natural consequences that come from that. And owning that, that's certainly something that I've done a lot of work with my young adults on as well. Yeah.
Yeah, trying to get them to understand that they've got to take responsibility for the things that they do, rightly and wrongly, doesn't matter. But as long as you take responsibility, you can then deal with whatever comes next.
Yeah, there's a lovely piece of parenting that I've really enjoyed, which is opening up the conversation around, well, what choices are available to you and what are the implications of each of those choices.
Yeah.
And I think it's a skill that we can learn, like as young adults, sure, but at any point in our lives, is to kind of go, well, what choices are available? Let's pop those above the surface. Let's even bring awareness to what the choices are. And then it's almost like scenario planning, isn't it? It's like, okay, so what are the consequences of me doing each of those? And not just for me, but for other people involved as well. And then we make a choice, an informed choice, which is where the intention comes in. Then we go forward with that choice with intention, because we are purposeful. We are filled with purpose. We've done the work to put that choice into action in a purpose-filled way. Yeah.
And that, sorry, I know I'm jumping in, but that also feeds into the conversation that we had 2 weeks ago with a guest speaker, where they were talking about sharing appropriately, but little acts of independence. And if you give your kids the opportunity to go, well, what are your choices and what are the outcomes of potentially of each of those, it is that developing those little acts of independence.
And absolutely. And if they're not taught that from a young age, then a lot of the feedback I'm getting from leaders at the moment is, these millennial generations, they don't want to lead, they don't want to lean in, they don't want to do the work. And yet actually have they been taught how to do this kind of stuff? And whatever generation of parents it is that we can kind of go, how was this workless generation raised? How were they shown what their little acts of independence? And believe me, I have to push back pretty hard sometimes. My youngest, who is not so young now, nearly 18, would love me to make every decision for her. And I just refuse. And we can be in standoff for quite a while. I go, no, I'm not deciding for you. You have to make these choices yourself. I don't know. Okay, well, sit with it until you do.
Yeah. Yeah, okay.
Because otherwise, how do we move through life unless we can go, do I want pink or blue? Do I want strawberry or chocolate? Like, that's a hard life ahead of a person if they can't make decisions. And that, again, comes back to the awareness, like lead yourself first. Yeah.
Paige, my question was around those self-limiting beliefs and accountability avoidance. What does it actually look like in action, and how do we overcome those? And I think we've talked a bit about the second part, but what does it look like in action?
So what's kind of the avoidance on the internal radio? And it might even be what you hear from others as well, right? And there are kind of different styles of accountability avoidance. But it can be, oh, I don't have time to do that. I don't have time. And you could be telling yourself that when in fact you're just avoiding something that you don't want to do. You have got the time to do it. It's prioritizing that you're not doing. That's not my role. That can be a very clear one. And that's where, there are two factors in accountability that clean most of it up. And the first one is clarity of expectations. And what's super interesting is that when you look at what are the sources of burnout, and there's been research done now on this over about the past 4 years or so, lack of role clarity underpins things like overwhelming job demands. It underpins things like poor change communication, right? Because if we get clear around the expectations, both of roles and of what's involved with change, then those risks for burnout kind of dissolve. And the reason they're risks for burnout, I'm just going to do a bit of a backstory on this, is because our brains are wired for certainty. Now, not control, certainty, because they are basically prediction machines. 7.5 Lessons About the Brain is a great book by Lisa something Miller. She's a neuroscientist. And she talks about this, how basically what we do is our brains look at what's going on for us based on past experience, then predict what's coming next. And this all happens below the surface and below consciousness. And we actually behave based on that prediction before it's even happened. Which is why age of AI, disruption, super cycle of change, all the things we've talked about really play with our brain's wiring because they make things that are unpredictable. We've never had this much change going on before. We haven't had AI available to us before. So there's no past experience that the brain can draw on to predict what comes next. Because of that, we move into kind of a fight or flight response, low level, chronic, kind of all the time. So clarity of expectations, whether it's around a role, whether it's around a change program, making clear what is mine to own in my role and equally what isn't, that provides certainty, which is a fundamental need of the brain. What can avoidance look like? We've talked a little bit about this at the front end of our conversation, over-reliance on systems, or maybe now even AI to make hard calls, rather than sitting down and having the right conversation in the right way with the right person about the right thing at the right time, which is accountability done right. We go, oh, the system made that decision. Or we outsource it to AI to sift through the data and come up with an answer, rather than actually, even though that answer has a human implication to it. So these behaviors, these types of behaviors, they create what I call a compliance culture. And trust erodes because all we're doing is ticking boxes. We're not actually using our human intelligence, our integrity, the nuance that we can discern, and performance as a result either stands still or actually goes backwards. So these self-limiting beliefs where a challenge or difference equals a threat, this is what shuts down our learning and adaptability. And so that's where the challenge lies in there being accountability avoidance and then self-limiting beliefs that kind of reinforce that, because ultimately our brains want to keep us safe and secure. And so they will keep us kind of playing in a safe and known space, but that's not what we need in moments of disruption and when there's technology, new technology like AI being brought into our worlds.
Okay, thank you. And I mean, what I take from that is that lack of clarity or role expectation is something that I can set myself if I want to take ownership of it. I don't have to wait for my boss or for the duty statement to come out to say, this is what I've got to do.
No, you can do the thinking yourself, John, and then you can go and have a conversation about it.
Yeah.
So this is the thing, is when I talk in teams and organizations about accountability, and again, this is the nature of the golden thread. It doesn't just go one way. You know, accountability is actually one of the things that we can very clearly and cleanly like manage up or lead up. I don't like to say manage up. I like to lead up with. So if you're not clear in your role, if you're not clear on the expectations around a piece of change work, do the best you can to go, well, this is what I reckon.
Yeah.
are the expectations, and then take those to someone and go, this is what I reckon. Can we have a conversation about how accurate this is and where there's a gap so I can fill it?
Yeah.
That's what's owning what's yours or what an individual's is to own. As you say, it's not sitting there passively going, well, no one's told me. No, they may not have done, but you can go and ask.
Yeah. All right. Beauty. Thank you, Paige.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And what a great conversation. The time has absolutely flown. And I think we've got to get into our wrap ups. But this is going to mean, Paige, we're going to have you back on again to chat about these other questions because we've got some really good ones still left ready to go. So I want to thank you so much, Paige. But before we get to sort of our final wrap ups and final thoughts from you, let's go to the regular team and see how they went. So, Jeanette, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
I love the conversation. And just how much when people think that they don't have control of what's going on in their brains, trying to make that certainty by leaning back into that accountability, by thinking about, okay, what, like John just said, being able to go, okay, what do I think about this? And then go and lead up, which I love that much better than manage up. And even Graham's bit about, getting to know yourself and how important it is for us as leaders to then be able to make a safer environment for other people. So whole conversation was awesome. I agree with Jez. We definitely need you back for the rest of the questions because this is, I reckon, a great start to a conversation. And I reckon we'll probably have some viewers and listeners that have questions for you too.
Sounds great. We'd love to come back.
Great. And thank you so much, Jeanette. Great questions today. Graham, I'll throw to you. Any final thoughts on today's conversation?
Just to echo Jeanette's comments, I think, Paige, it's been a great chat. And I'm a little sad that it can't be a lot longer. But thank you. One of the things that resonated for me was the idea that we can't outsource integrity to AI. But the biggest thing for me was just coming back to accountability it really is at a macro level for a human being. So, and I'm not sure, how we do this, but how do you just bring yourself back into it's just you, and maybe you make just one choice to not engage in social media because that enables you or empowers you to abrogate your own accountability. And then maybe you need an accountability buddy to help you make that choice or stick to that choice. But it's like, it's a small step thing, and I talk too much. It's been a great, really, really good conversation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Graham. And thanks for the questions today. So good. John, a bit of a latecomer, but I thought you still had some great insights today. Did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation?
I'm actually going to have to go back and listen to the front part of this because the conversation, as brief as it was, and apologies again, was fantastic. I mean, it aligns to my way of thinking, so which is really good. But I guess the thing that has come to mind a couple of times listening to Paige talk is be part of the solution, not part of the problem. So thank you.
Yeah, love that, John. And look, it's great to have you on, even if it was briefly, because I thought we had a great conversation as well. So that was really good. Great to have you on as always. And Paige, I just wanted to say, I thought that something you said at the very beginning, what I thought was such an interesting insight. We barely even touched on it. So this is probably going to have to be for conversation number 2. But AI being a mirror, I thought that was I haven't heard that, and I thought that was a really interesting concept. And then just also how we see the world is how we see ourselves. I thought that sort of sprung up as like, this definitely reminds me of my own life and sort of different situations where that's been the case. So I thought really, really good insights around everything else that everyone was talking about. Before we get to where people can find out more info and reach out to you, Paige, did you have any final thoughts on today's conversation? Any things that you wanted to touch on that we didn't get to?
I'd love to come back to this idea of the golden thread. And I think that the golden thread is to lead others well, we must first lead ourselves well. And that is that question, what's mine to own? And really, if when you think about it, at the global level, if each of us leant into that question and went, what's mine to own here? How might I not be seeing every perspective? Because what we haven't touched on is to be human is to be biased, right? We cannot have every perspective on everything. And if every individual on the planet went into a conversation, a meeting, a moment to moment going, I know I am biased. I know I am because I can't not be. To be human is to be biased. What am I not seeing? What am I not saying? What am I not listening to? Because in some way it's shut off in me because of my biases. And I reckon that is the golden thread. That's each of ours to own. And what that invites us to is curiosity over judgment. It invites us to humility, deep humility around no one can ever have all the answers. And it opens us up to the possibility of not having to face the age of AI alone, because why would we? Why would we when we are so biased? We're always going to be better together. And that's how we harness and co-create the intelligence that we need for what's coming next. So I reckon this golden thread is the possibility and opportunity of human-based accountability done right that will actually enable us to co-create something amazing in the age of AI, things that we maybe can't imagine at the moment. But if we do it right, we can really create something quite exceptional.
Amazing. Well, Paige, I mean, what an amazing conversation. And speaking of additional perspectives, say people want yours, Dr. Paige, where is the best place for them to reach out to you to get your perspective?
A good place to start is my website, drpaige.au. There's details there about how you can work with me individually, in groups, at conferences. My books are there. I also produce a newsletter, Leading Exceptionally, every couple of weeks, and you can sign up for that there too. So I reckon that's a good place to start.
Excellent. Well, Dr. Paige, like I said, we've got to get you back because this was an amazing conversation, and these conversations are always hot topics. So I'm sure we've got a lot of people listening. And again, as Danette said, if you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments of YouTube and Spotify. We've got spots there, and we'll ask them on the next episode with Dr. Paige Williams. Thank you to everybody that was on the podcast, regular team and guest included. And thank you to everybody that's been sharing. We're now over 11,000 subscribers on YouTube, hoping to get up more. So we're really happy with that. So keep sharing. And as always, everybody, have a magical week.